I wasn't looking for trouble. Honestly, I was just doing laundry, folding shirts, matching socks, cursing the never-ending pile like always. Then his blazer buzzed. That navy one he only wears when he wants to impress someone. I froze, thinking maybe it was his regular phone, but no. That was charging on the nightstand upstairs. This was something else, something I wasn't supposed to find. I reached into the pocket, fingers brushing cold plastic. A phone. Smaller, older, but definitely functional, and hidden. My stomach tightened. It was like touching a live wire. I didn't even have to unlock it. The messages were open, like fate had left the door ajar just for me. And there they were. Dozens of texts from someone named Chloe. Flirty. Intimate. Bold. My throat went dry. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Wish she'd leave more often. I sat down on the floor right there, surrounded by detergent and broken trust. I don't know how long I stared at that screen. Minutes, maybe hours. My heart was pounding, but not from sadness. Not yet. It was something colder, sharper, like ice spreading across glass. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just put the phone back in his blazer, right where he left it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to him, pretending everything was normal, counting the seconds between his breaths, memorizing the rhythm of a man who had no idea his secret was no longer a secret. I thought about all the times I'd felt something was off. The late-night work calls, the sudden showers after getting home, the cologne he only started wearing again last month. My instincts weren't wrong, I just wanted so badly to believe they were. But here's the thing. Some women confront, some throw plates or pack bags. I didn't. I waited. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted the ending to be mine. You see, when someone builds a second life behind your back, they think they're smart. They think you're soft. They forget that silence can be sharper than any scream. And I was done playing the quiet, smiling wife. I started thinking, not just about him, but about her. Chloe. She wasn't just some stranger. She was invited into my life by the man I married. That made her more than a mistake. She was part of a plan he didn't know I'd been writing too. And if he wanted to play games, fine. Let's play. But I wasn't going to flip the board. I was going to set it. The next morning, I made his coffee. Just like always, 2 sugars, no cream. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and told me he had a busy day ahead. I smiled back and told him I'd be doing laundry. Again. He didn't notice the way I watched him scroll his main phone with one hand while sipping his coffee with the other. So calm, so routine. He had no idea the real show had already begun. That evening, I waited for him to shower. The second he stepped under the water, I pulled the secret phone from his jacket again. My hands didn't shake this time. I wasn't a woman peeking behind a curtain anymore. I was center stage, rewriting the script. I read more messages. Learned how he spoke to her, casual, cocky, like a man living 2 lives with no consequences. And something inside me clicked. I wasn't just going to catch him. I was going to expose him, at his own table, on his own terms. Not with a confrontation, not with tears, but with something colder, smarter. He wanted to lie with a smile on his face? Fine. I'd smile too, right up until the moment it vanishes from his. I started checking the burner phone regularly, only when it was safe, only when I knew he wouldn't notice. It became part of my rhythm, like folding towels or watering plants. And each time I read their messages, I studied, not just what he said, but how he said it. The tone, the timing, the stupid emojis he never used with me. I got to know him, the version he saved for Chloe. And I started to see all the cracks in their little fantasy. She thought he was charming, mysterious. Some tragic husband stuck in a boring marriage. I could practically hear the voice he used with her, low, sweet, full of fake longing. It made me sick, but it also gave me power. I wasn't guessing anymore. I had his words, his habits, his exact style of seduction. If he thought he was the only one capable of pretending, He'd clearly never seen what a woman can do when she stops pretending to be blind. One Thursday night, I heard the shower start. That was my cue. I grabbed the burner, opened their thread, and typed slowly, mimicking every detail of his voice. "How about dinner at my place tomorrow? My wife will be out." Seconds later, Chloe responded, "Thought you'd never ask. What time?" I smiled. Hook, line, and lipstick trap. I waited a beat before replying, just long enough to feel real. "Let's say 8, I wrote. Then, just for good measure, I added one last line. "One condition. Don't mention it the next day. She's been watching me lately." I knew exactly how that would land. Chloe would feel important, like she was part of some secret mission, like she was winning, and that's what made it perfect, because people let their guard down when they think they've already won. She responded with a little wink emoji and something like, "Ooh, spicy." I didn't care. I deleted the conversation right after. No trace, no digital breadcrumbs. I returned the phone to his jacket, same angle, same position. Every detail had to match, because careless revenge is just drama. What I was planning was theater. And tomorrow night, opening curtain. That night, I lay in bed next to him again. He was scrolling, probably texting someone else, while I rehearsed everything in my head. Every line, every move. I looked over at him and smiled. Not because I loved him, but because he still believed I did. That was my greatest weapon. He thought I was still in the dark, but I was already setting the table. The next morning felt different. He kissed me goodbye like he always did, humming some tune as he grabbed his coffee. Same jacket, same mask. But I wasn't watching him anymore. I was watching the clock. Every second closer to 8 p.m. felt electric, and he had no clue. He left whistling down the driveway, thinking Friday night was just another lie he could tuck into bed with him. I spent the day preparing. Not food, not yet. I rehearsed my lines in front of the mirror, practiced smiling without blinking. That kind of calm that unsettles people more than any scream. I even picked out the outfit. Nothing flashy, just the same one I wore on our anniversary 2 years ago, the one he forgot. Tonight, he'd remember it, every stitch of it. I double-checked the phone just to be sure. Nothing left behind, no replies, no read receipts, just silence, like nothing ever happened. But I knew better. Silence is where secrets live. And tomorrow, that silence would walk through our front door wearing heels and perfume, and sit down for a dinner she'd never forget. Friday morning, I handed him his keys and kissed his cheek. "Don't forget to be home at 8, I said sweetly. "I'm making a very special dinner for you. And I have a surprise planned." He smiled like a man who thought he was getting away with something. He had no idea I was handing him a ticking clock, dressed in kindness. "I'll be there," he said, casual as ever. Of course he would. Chloe would be too. By 6:30, the house was glowing. I lit the candles on the dining table, thick, ivory ones he once called too much. I set out our wedding china, the ones we hadn't used in years, with linen napkins folded just right. Wine chilling. Napkins starched. The air filled with rosemary, garlic, and something sweeter. Anticipation. Every movement was deliberate. Every detail crafted not for romance, but for impact. 3 plates. That's the part I enjoyed most. I placed them carefully, equidistant, each with polished silverware and crystal glasses, not a speck out of place. I took a step back and looked at it all. Elegant, understated, devastating. If he noticed the extra setting, he might think it was for a guest, maybe a friend. Maybe his mother, but not her. He would never see her coming, not until she was already seated. At 7:50, I reapplied my lipstick, deep wine red, not my usual shade. I wanted him to notice something felt different, even if he couldn't name it. I checked the mirror one last time. Calm, composed, poised like a hostess on the verge of history. This wasn't just about catching him. It was about reclaiming every moment I'd swallowed my own doubts. Tonight, I'd watch him choke on them. He walked in right on time, coat slung over his shoulder, loosened tie, that smug little grin that used to melt me and now made my skin crawl. "Wow," he said, looking around. What's the occasion? I handed him a glass of wine and gestured toward the table. Just felt like celebrating, I said. Sit down. I've been waiting. He didn't even glance at the third plate. Of course he didn't. Men like him never look close enough. He sat down and leaned in, trying to charm me like old times. Smells amazing, he said. You didn't have to go all out. I smiled, warm and slow, the way you do when you're about to flip the lights on in a dark room. I wanted tonight to feel memorable, I said softly. We don't get enough of those lately, do we? He nodded, oblivious. The clock read 7:59. He finally noticed the third place setting. Are we expecting someone? He asked, brow slightly raised, wine glass halfway to his lips. I let the question hang there a moment, savoring it like the first bite of something rich. Yes, I said, steady as ever. Someone very special. His eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me, confused but trying not to show it. He laughed nervously. Should I change? I didn't realize. No need, I said, standing up slowly. You look just right for the occasion. I adjusted the candle nearest to his side of the table, just so, and walked toward the hallway. I could feel his eyes on me, trying to guess, trying to piece it all together. But he couldn't. Because tonight, he wasn't the one pulling the strings. That smile he walked in with? It was starting to fade. Then came the sound we were both waiting for, the doorbell. One single chime, soft, innocent. But I swear the air shifted when it rang. I turned toward him, heart steady, steps calm. She's here, I said, like I was announcing dessert. He stood up slowly, still unsure, still grasping for some kind of explanation. And I led him to the door. He followed me down the hallway, his steps slower than mine. I could feel the shift in his energy, like something inside him was starting to twitch. Doubt, maybe, or fear dressed up as confusion. I reached for the door handle with the same hand I wore my wedding ring on. There was something poetic about that. I glanced at him one last time, and he was still smiling, barely. Just enough to hide the panic starting to bloom. I opened the door like I was welcoming an old friend, and there she was. Chloe, hair curled, lips glossed, heels too high for someone with that much nerve. Her smile was bright and flirty, until her eyes landed on me. That smile cracked so fast it was almost musical. She froze, standing on the welcome mat like someone who'd just walked into her own trap. I could see it in her face. This wasn't the dinner she'd been promised. My husband's jaw went slack. He blinked like maybe he was still dreaming. Chloe, he whispered, as if naming her would change what was happening. And Chloe? She didn't move, didn't breathe, just stood there with a clutch in one hand and shame rising fast in her throat. I turned to him, slow and calm, my voice even as glass. You didn't think I'd miss the chance to have dinner with the woman you've been sneaking around with, did you? For a moment, no one said a word. Just the wind rustling the trees outside, the faint ticking of the hallway clock, and the silence of two people caught in a truth too heavy to dodge. Chloe looked at him, eyes wide, jaw clenched, as if begging him to fix it, to explain it away. But he couldn't. There was no script for this scene, no lie smooth enough to coat the taste of what they'd both been caught chewing on. He stepped back first, not toward her, toward me, like I was the safer choice now. Rebecca, I can explain. His voice cracked on my name, like it suddenly carried weight he wasn't strong enough to hold. I tilted my head slightly. Explain? I asked, like I genuinely didn't know the word. Chloe still hadn't moved. She was blinking fast now, lip trembling. She finally turned, heels clicking on the porch as she fled. I didn't stop her. I didn't call out. That wasn't my job. My eyes never left him. He was standing there in the open doorway, looking like a man who'd just stepped into a spotlight he couldn't control. Come in, I said, walking past him, brushing his shoulder. Dinner's getting cold. And just like that, the door shut behind us, not with anger, not with drama, just finality. He followed me in like a ghost, silent, slower than before, shoulders hunched as if the air had gotten heavier. I didn't rush. I moved with the grace of someone who'd been planning this moment down to the second. I began clearing the extra plate, the one she never touched, the one meant to be seen, not used. He watched me in stunned silence, hands twitching at his sides, like he didn't know what to do with them. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said softly, almost like a prayer. I didn't answer right away. I folded the napkin she never used, wiped the lipstick print from the rim of her untouched glass. All that effort she'd made to impress him, wasted. "You meant all of it," I finally said, my voice calm, almost kind. "Every message, every meeting, every lie. You meant it enough to carry a second phone." He opened his mouth to speak again, but I raised my hand slightly, just enough to stop him. "Save it," I said. "You already wasted your words on her." I set the final plate in the sink and turned to him, eyes clear. "Now it's my turn." He looked confused, unsure whether I meant revenge or freedom. I didn't clarify. Let him wonder. That was part of the meal he'd served himself. He stood there in the kitchen, mouth slightly open like he was still searching for the right excuse, the right lie, the right version of himself to slip into. But there was nothing left to reach for. I walked past him, calm, unshaken, like I was clearing dishes after a perfectly normal evening. In a way, I was. It was just that the main course tonight had been truth, and he was choking on it. "You can stop pretending now," I said, my back to him as I rinsed a wine glass. "I saw everything. I read it all." He tried again. "Rebecca, wait." But I turned around slowly, and this time he shut up. "You had your fun. Now it's my turn." I said it like I was ordering dessert, and that's when I saw it in his eyes. Real fear. Not because of what I knew, but because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was just done. "I want a divorce," I told him, clear and direct. He blinked like he hadn't heard it before, like those words couldn't possibly apply to him. "What? Babe, come on, we can fix this." I shook my head. "No, I already made copies of everything from your little burner phone. Chloe may have walked out, but a lawyer will walk in soon enough. You'll be hearing from her." He stepped toward me, slower now, like he thought proximity might soften the blow. "Rebecca, please, you're upset." "This isn't you." I almost laughed. "This isn't me?" "No, what isn't me is pretending anymore. What isn't me is folding his laundry while he folds lies behind my back." I looked him in the eye and gave him the truth he never expected. "You never really knew me. You just assumed I'd never open my eyes." He kept talking, voice cracking, trying to dig his way out with compliments, with memories, with that fake sincerity I'd seen him send to Chloe in half-hearted texts. I didn't flinch. I just dried my hands, one finger at a time, and let him unravel. "You thought I'd never find out," I said. "But I did. And now you get to live in the mess you made, alone." I started clearing the table. Not for him, not for us, for me. The candles had burned down by then, wax puddling at their base like slow tears. I blew them out one by one, each puff a tiny punctuation mark to this story. He stood there, still waiting for me to crack. But I didn't. I moved with peace, not rage. Because this wasn't about vengeance anymore. This was about clarity. And for the first time in a long time, I could see everything clearly. I poured myself a glass of wine, just one, sat down at the table that once held 3 plates, and now held only quiet. I didn't invite him to sit. I didn't ask him to stay. He lingered by the doorway, uncertain, like a man realizing the locks on the doors he once opened so easily had changed. And I let him stand there, soaking in the silence he once mistook for safety. I took a slow sip, the stem of the glass cool between my fingers. The room still smelled like rosemary and roasted garlic, but underneath it all was something sharper. Liberation. Not dramatic or loud, but steady. Absolute. The kind that settles into your bones and reminds you that you were never weak. You were just patient. He wasn't exposed by accident. He was invited to his own unmasking. As he finally turned and left, no words, no slamming doors, I stayed where I was. Still, composed. I looked at the place where she would have sat, then at the man who never really did. And I smiled, because I didn't just catch him. I didn't just confront him. I ended it, my way.